Welcome to today's webinar with Citizen Wolf. I am Leila, one of the campaign managers here at Birchal. And just before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land I'm based on today. Birchal is based on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Birchal is working with Citizen Wolf on a crowdsourced funding alpha. The information and discussion in this webinar is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as advice or as a recommendation to invest. Please always consider the offer document in the general CSF risk warning that is going to be available on birchal.com. Now, how today's session is going to run. Zoltan and Eric are going to take us through a presentation of the business that is going to go around for 30 minutes. And we're going to learn about what is Citizen Wolf, what happened since the last raise, and what are the plans after this raise. And then we're going to switch to a Q&A session. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you can see a little Q&A bubble. If you have any question during today's session, please pop in the Q&A box, and we're going to answer that after the presentation. Lastly, we are recording today's session, so if you have to jump off early, our recording will be sent around. If this is your first time investing as well, and if you have any questions about Birchal, please let me know in the Q&A, and I'll do my best to answer your question. That's it from me. I'd love to introduce you to Zoltan and Eric, the founders of Citizen Wolf.
Thank you, Leila. First of all, I'm Eric, one of the co-founders.
And I'm Zoltan. Nice to meet you, and thanks for your time.
And before we begin, we'd also like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation on whose lands we're meeting today, as well as pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So in terms of today's presentation and agenda, it's a very simple story in 3 parts. We're just going to give a quick introduction to who we are as Citizen Wolf for the people who may not have been with us from the start in our journey. We're going to talk a bit about what we've done and where we are now, and then a glimpse into what we've got planned for the future.
So for those of you who don't know us, we are in the fashion business, but we don't like to say that because we don't fit the mold of, what you might think that looks like. We make clothing. We make elevated everyday staples. We call them wardrobe staples. They're the classic garments that everybody wears through and replaces, more importantly. They're not trend-based, and we're not trying to win any fashion design awards. We want to make clothes that you love, that you wear for as long as you possibly can. And we do that by making them custom to fit your body using our AI-powered tailoring technology, which we call Magic Fit. And I'll explain a bit about that in a sec. So why do we exist? I think it's a very important question. And it's taken us many years to get to this level of clarity. And the very short story is the fashion industry is incredibly destructive. If you don't know, every 3 pieces of clothing made every single year goes to landfill unsold. It's a supply problem. Overproduction is the dirty secret at the heart of the industry, and nobody in the traditional fashion supply chain wants to talk about it. So we exist to unfuck the fashion industry and save our planet. And we do that by creating the technology that makes mass production obsolete. As I said, we don't fit the mold of what you might think is a traditional fashion brand. Yes, we are a fashion brand, and that's in the top left corner, but we're also a technology company because we've created in-house all the technology is proprietary. We've created it that allows us to work this way. And at the same time, we're also a factory, unlike other fashion brands. We had to start the factory here in Sydney. Everything's made here in Sydney. And we had to start that factory simply because nobody in the traditional supply chain wanted to change the way that they did business. Nobody wanted to move to made to order. So we had to start the factory to prove that it could be done. So the traditional fashion industry is plagued by a raft of problems. As I said, 1 in 3 pieces of clothing made every year goes to landfill unsold. That's an inventory problem, and it's because nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. Everybody makes a ton of stuff, crosses their fingers, and hopes that you buy it. That's crazy, and it drives landfill. By contrast, we ask you what you want today, and then we go and make it. Everything's custom made to fit your body as well, as I said. And that's one of the other problems that we solve is the limited size range. So maybe the brand that you like doesn't even make your size, or maybe they're out of stock in that size and they're never going to restock it. None of those things happen at Citizen Wolf. I alluded to the wasteful nature as well. The linear system, the traditional linear system is driving this landfill problem. By contrast, we're 100% circular. And really importantly, what that means is that we create new clothes from your old clothes. It's a true circle. It's nothing short of that. And the final problem in fashion is that it's largely due to fabrics and polyesters that are in everything. Unfortunately, not in Citizen Wolf, but in all the other clothes you might buy. It's driving a 300% increase in carbon emissions up to 2050. This is a World Bank stat. And you don't have to be Einstein to realize that that is incompatible with solving climate change. By contrast, our system creates 48% less carbon per unit created. And we do that, as I said, because we've developed all of the technology in-house that allows us to work this way. Our tech stack is, as I said, proprietary, and it is our defensible advantage. It comes in 3 layers, the first of which is Magic Fit. So if you've been on our website, you might have seen, you might have gone through the experience, but basically all we ask for is your height, weight, age, and a note about your body. And from those 4 pieces of data, we can create a mathematical 3D twin that's 94% accurate. And then we use that as the fit model effectively for your clothes. So we make the clothes, fit that model, we send it to you. If for some reason it doesn't fit and we didn't get it right the first time, and that does happen, we offer free remakes. So really importantly, there's no measuring tapes, there's no body scans, and there's no awkward photography in your knickers either, which other people might ask for who are in this space. So that's Magic Fit. The second part of the tech stack we call Garment OS, and that's all the things that we've built that basically drive the factory. Our made-to-order factory, really importantly. And then finally, there's the hardware component of the system, which is the factory. As I said, we had to start it because nobody else wanted to change the way they worked. If you don't remember anything that I said, just remember this. We only make what we sell. It's a radically simple idea, and it will transform an incredibly destructive industry. And that is why we exist. But you don't have to take my word for it either, because we have a few certifications. For those of you who know B Corp, I won't go too far into it. For those that don't, consider it like the Olympics of sustainability. It's pretty much the hardest certification to get. We qualified with over 100 points the first time. We're in the process of recertifying right now. And we're extremely proud to be one of the businesses that are using business as a force for good. The other thing is Ethical Clothing Australia. Since we started the factory, basically since day one, we've been ECA certified. And again, very proudly so. But that's basically just the labor component. B Corp is the totality of the business. So we're 13 people and 3 advisors. You're going to meet one of them very soon. He's very kindly agreed to come here today and join the Q&A. And we're going to introduce another one on video. So I'm going to hand over to Eric, who's going to talk about what we've been doing for the last 8 years.
So like all good tech stories, it all begins in a garage back in 2016, where Zoltan and I actually started the business. At the beginning, everything was done manually by hand. We would measure people up who came into the shop. We would lay out the fabric and work out the exact changes that each person needs, and then create the cardboard pattern, chalk it out on a piece of fabric, cut it by hand, and then sew it. So it was not a very scalable process. It took us about 2 hours, right, from someone coming into the shop to us being able to work out what we have to cut. But it was a very critical thing for us because it allowed us to gather all the data we needed to start developing the tech. And that took about 18 months and 2,000 customers. So from those garage days, which you can see in the photos, was not a very big space at all. It was a literal garage in Darlinghurst. We've grown and built the technology. So right now it is much more automated. We have a much bigger factory, about 20 times the size here in Marrickville. We have a couple of fancy laser cutters, which project everything that we need to cut, that automatically works out the right dimensions and the right panels for each and every item for us to cut with millimeter accuracy and then make right here in this factory. So it's a much more scalable and much more significant operation. And it's something which, even though Zoltan and I aren't from a fashion background, has become industry leading. And it's not just us saying it, it is basically the industry that have recognized the change that we as outsiders have been able to bring in terms of perspective and have been able to turn into an actual reality. Besides a number of prestigious awards, Zoltan and I are now in various industry groups as well, and having a real seat at the table in driving the change around sustainability and local manufacturing. In terms of some statistics at a glance, since we've started, we've had over 32,000 customers who have on average given us 4.8 out of 5 stars for products. So everyone's really, really happy with what we get. And it's not surprising because we make exactly what they want and we guarantee that it fits. In the process, we've made over 72,000 garments through Magic Fit at an average of about 8 days from the time you place your order to the time it gets shipped. We've had over $6 million in lifetime sales. And importantly, we've also grown 19% this financial year so far compared to last year. In terms of the unit economics, for a first-time customer, they spend on average about $130 with us, which is about 1.5 garments. And after taking into account the cost of manufacturing and cost of goods, as well as the acquisition costs, we are still profitable on that first order. But importantly, on average, over the lifetime of that customer, we have over $400 in sales per person and an average profit of $171 per customer. So for the first few years, we were only doing t-shirts, and that was very deliberate. We were being very methodical about the approach and making sure that the technology was stable and was actually solving the problem that we wanted it to solve before we scaled out. And 2 years ago, we went on to Birchal for our first investment round to raise money to do 3 things: to increase the range of products going beyond t-shirts, to increase the scale of the factory so that we could actually make all these things that we're going to offer, and thirdly, to be able to scale our customer base to start targeting international as well. Thanks to investors like you, we successfully raised $1 million through 499 crowdfunded investors who came on board. And since that time, I'm pleased to report that we've completed virtually all the things that we said we would do. We've scaled the product by launching polo, sweats, and shirting. We've scaled the factory to allow us to make all these things. And for international, we've started the process, and to date, we've had about $40,000 in sales through testing, and we continue to expand that as we learn and optimize for that audience. In terms of the context of the last couple of years, it has certainly been a lot more challenging than we were expecting. There was a recent report that Australia Post released, which catalogued the e-commerce market for Australia, and it showed that the fashion market actually fell 8.7% last year. The Australian Bureau of Statistics also released a report last week that showed that the quarterly sales in fashion at the start of this year fell a further 4.6%. So they're very, very tough trading conditions for fashion retail. Having said all that, thanks to the investments that we've made and thanks to the model that we have, we've been able to actually buck that trend and grow 19% year to date. In fact, it's our best result ever. And it's the fastest we've hit $1 million within a financial year than we've ever had before. And that's thanks to that lifetime value growth of 33% because we have more products available for customers to buy. That's also driven a 35% increase in the average order value. And our output in the factory has increased 31% to match that. And importantly, our return on ad spend has improved 50% thanks to the in-house investment in building a team that we've done. One final piece is that it's also allowed us to win contracts that we've not been able to do before when we were just only doing t-shirts. We've actually landed our largest contract ever so far with the Great Barrier Reef Authority, which has been worth $100,000 in this financial year alone. And that was a very interesting contract because originally it did go out to the panel of suppliers that the government has, and they found that no one could actually meet the criteria of what they wanted. And it wasn't that complicated. They wanted something that was sustainable because it is a Great Barrier Reef Authority and they don't want microplastics being leached into the waterways and the reef every time someone washes their uniform. But also they wanted, where possible, as much local manufacturing content as possible. So that went out for retender, and we were invited to have a look at it. We decided to go for it, and we actually won it. And now we are basically doing the uniforms of 300 of their staff, which includes polos and corporate shirts. And as mentioned, it's been about $100,000 worth of orders to date. To provide that with some context, that's almost 10% of our revenue so far just this year alone through one contract, which really leads into what we've got planned next.
So the barrier reef was really a light bulb moment for us. I think it's safe to say. You know, we've been, as you'll see, we've been making uniforms for a long time, very small contracts, but nothing of that scale. So when we won, and for the reasons we won, we decided to start looking more deeply into the uniforms market. And what we discovered is that it's about a $1.2 billion market annually just here in Australia. The stat that blew my mind, though, is that 50% of Australian workers wear a uniform every day. That's almost 7.5 million people. And so all of the problems that touch the consumer fashion market more or less map directly into the uniforms market. So these problems touch 7.5 million people every day. Over 90% of ASX 200 companies have an ESG target, and of course procurement is part of that. And what we're starting to see, you know, the barrier reef is one example, is that governments are starting to not only desire, but actually mandate local content quotas where stuff needs to be made in Australia where it can be. And that just makes a lot of sense. So as I said, we've been doing uniforms since day one, basically. We've worked with about 50 companies. We're very proud of all the work we've done. Lots of small contracts, a few larger ones too. You know, a couple of 100 shirts or something. And really, but the important part is that this has all been inbound. Eric and I have never gone out and tried to chase this uniforms market. Basically, what happened was somebody came in through the consumer side, loved our Magic Fit garments, or theirs, sorry, and then decided that they wanted everybody they work with to have the same experience. So either they ran their own company or they were part of a team in a much larger company, and they were able to make those kind of decisions. And so that's basically how all of these contracts came to us so far. And as I was saying, once we started looking into the uniforms market, we've basically identified that there's 3 problems that plague the entire industry. There's the made-to-measure problem, there's the stock problem, and there's the ESG or the sustainability problem. So I'll go through those in turn. Made-to-measure on the very large government contracts in particular, but certainly in big corporate uniforms too. There's a mandatory made-to-measure component because like not everybody just neatly fits the bell curve. But everybody has to wear a uniform, right? So there's no way to get around it. But the reality is that everybody hates made-to-measure in the traditional uniform supply chain. And they hate it because it's only 2% of the volume, but it takes pretty much the same amount of time to solve that 2% as it does to solve for the 98% of the volume, right? So they hate it internally at the big uniform suppliers, but also their factories down the chain, they hate it too, because they're not set up for single piece production. They want to make 1,000, they don't want to make one, they want to make 1,000 pieces, right? So everybody up and down the supply chain hates made-to-measure, but they have to do it. The second problem is inventory. And the uniforms market traditionally is no different to the traditional consumer fashion market, where inventory is basically the biggest problem, and it is the driver of waste. So on the big uniform contracts, again, after rollout, these are multi-year contracts for the most part. So probably 60% of the total bulk, the total volume goes out in year 1, right? Like as the refresh. But then over the duration of the contract, they need to hold approximately 40% of the volume. And that goes on for many years. And part of that is that they're mandated to hold certain quantities of every single size in stock at all times. to account for churn and staff turnover. Because if you join a big government department or the military or even like Qantas or whatever, you need a uniform on day one, right? So they have to be able to ship uniforms in every size. What that means is that if they drop underneath those mandated quantities in each size, the big uniform suppliers are suddenly non-compliant on the contract, and they actually face a financial penalty if they don't fill that stock hole within, say, 60 days. The problem is they might only need to buy a couple of pieces, or maybe 10 or 20 or a dozen pieces or something, right? A very small amount. Because, for example, you know, they had stock, but extra small went under and maybe 3XL went under. But they can't buy 5 pieces or 10 when they go to their factories. So they can't just fill the hole. They need to hit the minimums. They need to make 500. They don't want 500, they want 5, right? But they can't make 5. So what happens is they make 500, they backfill the entire bell curve, and now they're overstocked in every single size. And that inventory problem is what creates the massive amounts of wastage. So it's about 1 in 7 pieces in the uniform game that go to waste at the end of every contract. So it's a very expensive problem as well. And a lot of cash is tied up in inventory by these big uniform suppliers. And at the end of the day, it may not move and they just burn it. So the final problem is sustainability. We've touched on it before. It was one of the big reasons we won the Barrier Reef. But the TLDR there is 12,000 tonnes of textile waste, of uniforms specifically, are landfilled in Australia every year. So we have a solution for each one of those problems, and this is our go-to-market strategy. The first phase is, well, firstly, we want to win more contracts like the Great Barrier Reef that we control ourselves. But secondary to that, we see an enormous opportunity to become a contract manufacturer for the big uniform suppliers. And there's 2 ways we can do that, and 2 distinct phases. The first is made to measure. As I said, they hate it. Everyone hates it, but we love it. This is what we built. We've spent 8 years building the technology. It works really well. It's been validated over 70,000 times. It's what we do every day. It's what we know. So we can basically walk into the big uniform suppliers and say, you know that thing you hate doing? That thing that soaks up 50% of your internal bandwidth, but only 2% of the volume? We can take it. Just give it to us. We'll solve it. So that's the first phase of how we're going to approach this. And then the second is, as I was talking about, the backfill of the inventory holes. If you take away the tailoring layer from our technology stack, what you're left with is an on-demand manufacturing solution, effectively, for apparel. And what that means is that we can backfill those inventory holes by the single piece, because our factory is set up for single piece production. So they no longer have to go offshore. They no longer have to buy 500 when they need 5. We can just give them the 5. And even if our unit prices are different, let's say more expensive than they would be getting offshore, they still win, because they're not buying 495 pieces that they didn't need. So these are the 3 solutions, slightly different layout, more or less the same idea. As I said, we want to continue to win contracts like the Great Barrier Reef, where we control everything, and that's basically a turnkey ESG solution. And then there are 2 ways that we can interface with the existing uniform manufacturers, or suppliers, I should say, either to solve made to measure or to solve their stock problems. And each one of these is a very real, very expensive problem in a $1.2 billion market, which is hyper concentrated. Australia loves the concentrated industry, right? 4 players control 50% of that $1.2 billion market. So there's only 4 companies to talk to with $600 million in revenue. And they all have this problem. So we're talking about money, and that's why we're here. We're here on Birchal to ask for your money, for your help, so that we can invest and chase what we consider to be a very real opportunity for us. We want to do 3 things. We want to scale our factory another time and basically decouple the production line, sorry, so that we have our consumer business production and our uniforms production separated. At the moment, they compete for resource and it's just not working so well. Sales, we want to dedicate, as I said, we want to win more contracts like the Great Barrier Reef. We're cognizant that that's going to require us to go out and become, do B2B sales. And then the final thing is that we want to license our technology to other people. So yes, we can start out contract manufacturing and that's going to be great. But the real prize is actually to put our technology into existing factories all around the world and change the way that they operate and they do business. And that's in service of our goal, of our vision, or our mission, sorry, which is to make mass production obsolete. Okay, so if you watched the video, you might have seen this, but it's important to outline the value prop of a CW uniform. So staff love us because they get something that's guaranteed to fit. And that's not always the case with traditional uniforms. CFOs love us because, as I said, we're going to save them money. And more importantly, perhaps, the earth absolutely loves us because on demand means zero waste, means zero landfill. Okay, so why now? Well, as I said, everyone in the big corporates and governments alike have ESG targets and they're only getting more stringent. So sustainability is a problem that's touching everybody and it's getting bigger. And we also said that the governments, are increasingly not only desiring but mandating that what can be made here in Australia is made here in Australia. Local content quotas. So we tick that box too. And then more importantly, or most importantly, I should say, our technology is proven, it's validated. 70,000 garments for consumers, and we've validated it through the Great Barrier Reef as well. So we are ready. All we're doing is we're taking exactly what we do for consumers and mapping it into a new market. We're not changing the way that we operate. And then finally, there's obviously political tailwinds and impetus. A few weeks ago, David Pocock came out and said that he wants to reinvent the way that government procurement occurs to prioritise locally made small businesses, which is obviously a boon to somebody like us. And then the Prime Minister came out only last week or the week before with his new Future Made in Australia strategy, which is a response in many ways to what happened through COVID. Supply chains froze up. So sovereign capability is incredibly important to governments. And we are ready, we're here, we're onshore, our entire supply chain is onshore, and we're ready to take advantage of that. But we realize that we're coming from a consumer model, and uniforms is not a consumer business, it's a business-to-business proposition. So in light of that, we decided to put on a new advisor, Nigel Whelan. He comes with an incredible resume. He's run the two biggest uniform suppliers in Australia for over a decade, and he comes with much more experience than that. And we shot a video with him. He's based in Melbourne, so I wanted to play a little video quickly of Nigel talking about us and our opportunity.
Hey, I'm Nigel Whelan, working in the industry for about 25 years now, in senior executive roles with larger apparel corporations, supplying the uniform industry, particularly in the total apparel management market and with technical backgrounds. So over the last 25 years in the industry, I've seen a lot of change happen from product being totally manufactured across Australasia to a complete shift to offshore, and that's come at a cost, particularly a cost in terms of people's job losses. But also in terms of sustainability, it's led to a lot of wastage for the industry. We're actually importing because we have to rather than need to. And shift back to local production for a portion of that would result in much reduced wastage, i.e. landfill. So within the uniform space, there's often difficulty doing the stuff that's hard to do. The sizes that are odd, the made to measures. I think the opportunity is for certain to do the shit that people don't want to do. in the market, both offshore and locally. There is very few, if anyone else out there, offering what Citizen Wolf can offer in terms of short run production. My experience was amazing in terms of getting my first Citizen Wolf product. This morning I walked in, I got asked 3 simple questions. I answered those honestly and ended up with a polish it fits perfectly. So I can't complain whatsoever about the experience. They took not one measurement of my body, and yet I still, apart from my height and my weight, but those were just questions I answered, and it's perfect. You get very few options in life to actually make a difference, and I think by joining this advisory, I'm getting an opportunity to have some impact and potentially help reduce waste, help this planet recover from what we've done to it, what we're doing to it. My own investment part of it.
Okay, so for the investors who have been with us from the start, I do also want to clarify that this is not a pivot. Our consumer business still is 91% of our revenue. So we're not going to be changing away from that, and that will continue to grow. What this is about is how do we turn that 9%, which is all inbound, into a much more substantial base. And for that, we do need to have a team that is dedicated and separate, so as to not derail the other 91% of our business. And we do see that this is actually the best and biggest opportunity we have. We've delivered everything that we've said we would in the last virtual round back in 2022. And as a result, we are a much better business than we've ever been. Our metrics across the board are better than they've ever been before, thanks to all those strategic investments that were made. And importantly, we're ready for the next phase because all those pieces are 100% transferable from the consumer market to the uniforms market. And that opportunity is right now. And that is why we're on Birchal. And we're really, really excited by this next chapter. And we hope you are too. With that, we'll now hand over to you guys for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. This was so good. I've been working with these guys for the past 2 months, but I still learn something new every time that we talk. Are we ready for the Q&A?
Before we do, I'd like to introduce Mark Kelly. He's been advising us since maybe 2017 or 2018, a long time. He's one of our first investors, and he's a weapon. He comes with an incredible resume as well. And we are very thankful to have him here today and to have him advising us.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for joining us. Can I just ask you guys to stop sharing your screen so that we can see you better?
Yep.
Thank you. Mark, can you tell us a little bit about your background and why did you agree to be an advisor for them?
Sure. I spent 25 years in the magazine industry, in the media industry. I was as well as running Vogue, InStyle and Marie Claire, so prestigious fashion magazines. For the last 10 years, I've been running a global fashion technology company, providing sustainable solutions to the fashion industry globally and all of the big brands globally. And more recently, I've been focused on the uniforms opportunity for Citizen Wolf.
Awesome. And can I ask, why did you decide to invest on them?
Money follows management. I've always been impressed by Citizen Wolf's vision and mission. I've been impressed by the leadership team and the broader team they've built. And I wanted to have specific skin in the game myself as they scale the business.
Do you buy from them?
Of course.
Are you actually wearing it now?
Wearing a Citizen Wolf shirt that I've had for
I was going to say that's a fabric we haven't stocked for like 5 years.
That's right. And
The OG.
yes.
Good. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we jump on the Q&A, we had an investor joining Birchal's website today and asking a few questions. And the main question that I would love for you to answer is, why are you doing an equity crowdfunding? You could go to a bank and get a loan. You could get VCs to invest. Why are you deciding to go back to your community and do this type of funding?
We had a really great experience the first time around with Birchal, and having our customers and community come on board and actually be a part of that journey, I think has been transformational, right, in the business, and we do want more of that. In terms of other sources of funding, yes, we do and do tap into loans as well. So it's not an and or proposition. It is very much we are using available funds. In terms of other forms of investors like private equity and the like, we have been down that path before as well. And it's one of those things where it's a process which never ends, right? There's no end in sight. And one of the things we did really like about the Birchal model is that it's a fixed time frame, which means we can focus on getting the funds that we need and then executing, as opposed to constant, endless meetings with investors, which may not go anywhere.
Yeah. And especially when they don't have a timeline, right? So if they can make a decision today or in 3 years, they would just sit and wait. Mark, I hope you don't do that. Eric, we had a question that you mentioned year to date in your presentation. Were you meaning the financial year or the calendar year?
Oh, financial year to date. Sorry, I should have clarified that. So the first 9 months of this financial year.
Beautiful, thank you. Gabrielle, I hope that answers. Let us know if you'd like to know anything else. Megan is asking, would uniforms include things like high visibility for mining sites eventually?
I'd say in the short term, no. Right. That's not to say that it wouldn't be possible down the track, but certainly for this round and what we're looking to do, it's starting with things which we know we can do really, really well and get more of a beachhead into the contract suppliers. Once we've done that, we're more than happy, and it's part of the plan to work with them on product development, to work on the next few things as it makes sense, of which high vis and other types of products may fall out, but it won't be in this first phase.
Yeah, that makes sense. Probably Megan is asking that because she might work in the sector. So, and this is one of the good advantages of doing this type of funding, because you guys are seeing things that probably the company haven't seen yet as an opportunity. So you joining as an investor, you can always participate into building a bigger business.
We actually had another one of our customers, uniform customers, who is in the construction business, ask us if we're happy to do it. And they would say that with the moment we do, they're going to put their hands up to be the first test case. So already there's already a small contract there, but we're not, as I said, doing it just yet. It's just a little bit more complicated, and we want to make sure that the first few steps are right.
Gabrielle is asking, if you raise the funds required, what do you imagine there will be a split between the customer sales and the uniforms?
So at present, our consumer business is 91%, and 9% is the uniforms business, and that is, as Zoltan has also mentioned, without us trying. I see it's very conceivable that it won't take very, very long for us to actually have a predominantly uniforms contract. And the reason I say that is because we are the only solution at the moment in Australia to solve some very major headaches with just the big four. Not only that, the nature of the contracts is that they tend to be large and long-term. So with the Great Barrier Reef, as an example, one contract for a very small government unit is already 10% of our revenue. It doesn't take that many for it to really add up, let alone working with bigger and bigger units.
Awesome, thank you.
Focus of the funds is on uniforms.
Yeah, thank you. Louisa said, congratulations, I love it. And I dreamed about improving the Australian public school uniforms. She says that they are disgusting for the kids and they are made of plastic, which is horrible during summer. Will you be looking at that space as well?
So I've got small kids myself, and I know this problem very, very intimately. Every time my daughter gets changed for school, I'm sort of like, oh, I'm so sorry, darling. There's nothing I can do just yet. Safe to say, in the future, it's entirely likely that we do start to move into school uniforms, but to Eric's point, it's not in the short term. The caveat there, I suppose, is that school uniforms are an extremely price-sensitive category. Everybody must wear a uniform, and everybody must wear the same uniform. And so the schools can't be seen to be forcing parents to spend a lot of money for something that's much better for their kids, don't let me get you wrong, but that's more expensive than what it would be if you were getting polyester out of Vietnam or Bangladesh or something. So yeah, never say never, but it's not in the short term.
Interesting. Fami is asking what is the current valuation and what multiple of the EBITDA does that represent? I can probably answer that for you. Now we are in the expression of interest phase, which means that Eric and Zoltan are having conversations with investors, validating the valuation they want to go forward with and gathering all of this feedback. You're going to have all of this information in the offer document, which is going to be available to you on Tuesday at 12 p.m. So keep an eye out. If you haven't expressed your interest yet, I will send you a link as well, and we go from there. Anything you like to add?
I was just going to say that if there's a QR code on our presentation, which links, if you haven't yet registered your EOI, that QR code that was on the top slide and the bottom will take you straight there. So we can put that up if you want to grab it with your camera.
Beautiful. Carmel said, thank you so much for your clarity. How does entering the uniform space affect the fabric that you have to source?
So there's going to be 3 different ways that you can engage with Citizen Wolf or what we do and the technology. For anyone who wants to use us as a full turnkey solution, right, we will offer the exact same range of fabrics. So they'll be completely sustainable. It'll be the same properties that we have. And that's what we've actually done for every single uniforms contract we've done to date.
Yeah.
So that part doesn't change. The other 2 ways to engage with us, where we're working more as a contract manufacturer, fabrics is one of the things which we won't necessarily control. It will be generally a technical fabric, which the uniform supplier will get in bulk because it's made for a specific purpose, and we will work with that within certain guidelines and limitations. But the key goal there is to focus on reducing the amount of waste and the amount of landfill that is completely unnecessary in the industry.
Awesome, thank you. Rob said, great presentation, product, and progress today. Thank you. As a customer, I love the product. How are the financial forecasts for revenue and profitability in the next 3 years? What are your plans for liquidity? I can probably answer that for you, Rob. ASIC takes a very firm view about future projections, whether there will be a product revenue or even return on investment. The best way of making a decision on that is checking the offer document that, again, is going to be available on Tuesday. Essentially, they're going to have the last 12 months of financial statements. You can see what the financial position the company is in now. You can see the revenue, accomplishments, customer base, and everything else, and make a decision based on that. Let me know if you need more information. I can send you some resources, but that's pretty much it. James is asking, can you use the personalized data you get from a uniform contract and target customers for retail sales?
So that's going to be an area of privacy, which we'll need to tread carefully. So there are going to be certain instances where a client that we're working with is happy, right, to provide us with that data on a personal level, and the staff know in advance. So there are some uniforms contracts that we work with at the moment where all the staff know that it's Citizen Wolf, and it's actually the feature, right, that they're getting a Citizen Wolf uniform, and they are told up front, right, that they will provide the data directly to us on our website, and that gets stored, and they can order more things for themselves down the track. So that's absolutely fine. There are others where the data gets anonymized, where we don't actually know who the person is. We just get the data, right, and then there's some sort of tracking, and then we just give it to the client, and then they do the distribution. So it's really going to depend on those privacy aspects.
Thank you.
One thing to add to that, it's less about the retail side of it, although I think the way we've had uniforms to date, if you invert that, I think it's likely true that it's going to work the other way. So previously we've had somebody come into the consumer business, love what we've made for them, and then we've gone and made uniforms. I think it's safe to say that for the people that are on the made to measure spectrum of a uniform contract, right? So they're either very small or not very probably large. They would likely struggle to get clothes at the best of times. So if they get a uniform and it fits, then likely they're going to start asking, well, who made this? Where do I get more of it? And I would say it's probably it'll be inbound on their side.
Yeah, it has actually happened in terms of, I know we have quite a number of new customers who joined us and found out about us because they got a uniform made by us. I wouldn't say that it's a large proportion, but it's not something that we've pushed, and it's certainly something which is a new opportunity. Again, depending on the privacy requirements, it's certainly another opportunity for us as a sales channel.
I just wanted to say one more thing on that. Regardless of converting that customer to retail, it's important to say that all of the data that we get into the system makes our technology better. So the more uniforms that we make, it actually makes the consumer experience better for everybody, right? Not just for that individual person who had that particular made to measure uniform made for them. So I just wanted to clarify
That's
that.
a really good point. The more data points that you have in, the better is the final product coming out. Just out of curiosity, is there any investor here today that haven't bought from them yet? Let me know in the Q&A, just out of curiosity, if you have tested the technology or not, or if it just came from the investment opportunity. That'll be good to know. Carmel asked a question that I would like to ask as well. How would licensing the tech of the Magic Fit work? So if you're actually gonna expand this and sell the tech, the Magic Fit tech, how does that work? Do you go to companies and then you offer that, and then you can provide just the technology as a side product? How does that work?
I'll take this one. So I'll give you one example of how it might work. Right now, today, the Country Fire Service Authority, the CFA, which is the Victorian Rural Fire Service, they currently have a van with a man and one of every size driving around the state 365 days a year, fitting firefighters so that they can then get their medium or their large shirt, but maybe they're a small pant or whatever, right? So they get the right combination. That costs them somewhere in the region of $300,000 to $400,000 a year, right? Just this one fire service in order to put the guy in the van on the road and all of it. Magic Fit can solve that problem virtually immediately for far less cost. So it's things like that we would be able to do. One other thing is that we have already done a pilot last year with KidX. It was a consumer fashion brand, but with KidX, you may or may not know them, where we installed Magic Fit on her website, and her customers got tailoring for the very first time. And we proved that it can be done, that everyone was really happy. And so back into the uniforms thing, it's entirely possible that we will put our Magic Fit tech in the portals that the uniform suppliers use. So when, they get a new recruit for the fire service or whatever, and they go on and they go, okay, I get my 10 t-shirts and all of my gear. They can just stick in their Magic Fit details and they'll get given the most correct sizes.
So good. Because it's so frustrating how it changes from website to another, right? You buy one that is going to be medium, and in the next website, you're extra large. You're like, how does that happen?
Totally.
I'd just add that the integration with the website is very simple as well.
Yeah, we've been app on Shopify at the moment.
Yeah, I'd also emphasize that this is not a new idea for us. From the very beginnings, we've always thought heavily about how scalable the tech can be, and everything's been built as modules so that they can be deployed in different ways.
Beautiful. Definitely makes more sense for the companies just to hire this product, then develop that themselves, right? How much did that cost you, and how long was that process to develop it?
Years, basically.
Yeah.
And many millions of dollars.
Yeah, I'd say that it's one of those things which from the outside may seem simple. And there are, to be fair, a lot of different players who tackle different parts of the problem, right? There are plenty of companies out there that do solve the fit issue through various ways, be it scanning or whatever. But the problem is there is no player that does it end to end, which means the technology always falls in that integration. And that's the hard part, because it's one thing to get your measurements. It's another thing to work out, well, how do the patterns fit together in a way that makes sense?
Yeah.
How do you account for different fabric properties and the way it drapes on you? How do you account for different stances of people?
Yeah.
There are all these other things which you just don't get without having made tens of thousands of garments.
Yeah. Personally, I love that you have the different fabrics there as well. I would have absolutely no idea, but you have a short description of what is the fabric like, if it's more for summer or winter, so that's super helpful as well for someone like me that has no idea. Brandon said, love the presentation, well done. Seeing that you're getting into the uniform businesses makes perfect sense. Are there plans to explore SKU uniforms that we already discussed before, or sports uniforms?
Yeah, I think so. I think sports teams, or just teams generally, right? It could be sports, or it could be the team in Atlassian or wherever you work. I think there's an incredible opportunity to develop custom or like bespoke stuff for teams. So yeah, it's absolutely something that we are going to look at in the future. Not in the short term, I would say.
Yeah. Again, I just emphasize that the whole uniforms opportunity or market is actually available, but we're not so, I guess, naive as to think we could take it all on in one go. So, so we are. I think the phrase that Mark likes to use a lot is we're going to eat the elephant one piece at a time, and there are parts of the industry which we can basically switch on tomorrow because we've already got it, right? And we're already doing for our existing customers, and those are the ones which make sense for us to focus on, right? To build out, and it doesn't take that many contracts again for us to see a significant increase in revenue as a result, and then use that beachhead to then build on the next thing and have those partnerships to do the product developments to work for much more specialist types of uniforms.
So it's just the first step, not the last step, right? Cool. This is a good question. When you say that you're doing uniforms, does that include pants as well?
Yep, absolutely. So we don't make pant. Well, we have only one pant product at the moment, which is a sweat pant. But we absolutely need to start making pants. So the way we're thinking about approaching the beachhead, as they're talking about in uniforms, is go in and prove with an SKU that we already make right now, like for example, polos or button-down shirts. Go in and prove to one of these large suppliers that we can handle that made-to-measure problem, basically. Prove that we can do it, and then at that point, get them to commit to using our technology, and then we will go ahead and make pants. And the good news is whether we make pants for uniforms first or the consumer market first, it doesn't really matter, because the patterns, although they will change a little bit, not a lot, they cross-pollinate, right? So anything that we end up making in the uniforms, if it's appropriate, we can put it back into the consumer business too. So there's incredible benefits and efficiencies to that. But short story, yes, we will be making pants.
Yeah. On that point, I'd also like to emphasize that because we've had a few conversations with various people, and I think there's this question of, is the uniforms opportunity in conflict with the consumer business? And I would answer that it's not. If anything, the more we look into it, it's absolutely complementary, right? Not only is it 100% transferable from one to the other, but what we do in one side ultimately benefits the technology and the infrastructure we've built, right? If there's going to be a contract that a supplier wants us to work on to develop pants, we'll do that, which then means that becomes available for consumers, as Zoltan has pointed out. And that'll be true for all other types of garments that come through.
Yeah,
so
jackets, shorts, whatever it might be.
So in some respects, it's basically the story of what we've been doing, which is our consumer brand has actually been the way we fund the R&D, right, for all the technology that we've been building.
Great way of putting it. Margot said, do you expect any expansion into wool products? Essentially, she's asking if we're going to expand into other fabrics and colors to make it more fashion appealing.
Did you say, sorry, was the question about wool specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we already use a beautiful 100% Australian merino wool I'm wearing one now, Mark's wearing one, in our t-shirts, and I love it. They're the ultimate base layer. We run them in various colors like we do all of the other t-shirts. So A, we love wool. B, if I read between the lines, I'm assuming maybe she means knitwear, like jumpers. So not sweats, which we do, but just knits. And the answer to that is yes. In fact, Nigel, the new advisor, he has co-founded an on-demand knitwear factory, effectively, in just outside of Melbourne. And so we're now starting to talk to, now that he's got his perfect polo, as you saw, we've delivered him his magic fit details, and he's actually in the process of making the first prototype on his machines of a knitted jumper. So that, again, it's this idea of, you know, cross-pollinating between the two. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, let us know if it doesn't, then we can talk about that in more details. What is a clear plan for boosting production capacity in terms of human resources, as they are so hard to find?
So staffing is definitely a challenge. At the moment, we've been fortunate in that we've been able to keep up, and the team that we have been extremely loyal. They've been with us for years, actually. I think our first employee
Is one of our seamstresses.
and who's still with us after so many years. And I don't think we've actually even had any turnover of our machine room.
We haven't, no.
That I think about it. So we've been very, very fortunate. And I think a large part of that's because we are Ethical Clothing Australia accredited and B Corp certified. So, you know, they do get paid, above living wages. They are, they have good working conditions, etc. So it's a good environment to work in. Secondly, we actually sublease. So to give some context for people who haven't visited us before, our building has 2 floors, which we rent both of. We don't need the top floor, all of it just yet, and we actually have subleased that to the Social Outfit. The Social Outfit are a charity that helps refugees learn new skills in fashion and clothes making so that they can actually have sustainable living without having to rely on basically government handouts and the like.
That's so nice.
Yeah, it's something that we've supported for a very, very long time, and we've actually employed 2 staff members from their program who've been with us. So it is something that we will continue to do, and we will continue to support them. And that provides a very nice pipeline, right, for our expansion as we need it. The second piece to that is that we are working at an industry level on a much broader discussion of skills. So I'm actually part of a New South Wales Government Sustainability in Fashion panel, where this is one of the topics about what do we need to do to encourage more people to consider, right, fashion as an industry. How do we look at TAFE, for example, to provide the right skill sets and training, and basically mapping out the entire industry, because it is not just a problem we face, the whole industry faces, and we're not going to be the ones to provide the solution, but we are very actively part of solving that problem.
Awesome. Can I ask where the employees are from?
Yep, so it varies. They are mostly from Asian countries such as Burma. We have a few from China, some from Hong Kong. So it does vary. From the Social Outfit, it does depend on a lot of the refugee intakes. So they're seeing more people from India at the moment, as well as some Middle Eastern countries. But the good thing is, because they are basically in the same building, we're getting to interact with them, and they're often watching what we're doing to learn the way we do things. And yeah, it's really, really nice.
That's an amazing project. I didn't know about it, so we learned something new every day. Talking about fabrics again, any plans to source hemp fabrics in Australia?
Yeah, we'd love to. So we run hemp. We have done for many years. We love hemp. It's the miracle fiber. it's still not widely grown in Australia, and it's safe to say that the Australian hemp industry is nascent and focused on oils and food and stuff like that. So we haven't heard of anybody who's supplying hemp fiber at scale in Australia yet. But we know that there's a brand out of Byron called Offends, and they've actually purchased their own farm, I don't know, 100 acres or something to go and start growing hemp at scale. So yeah, look, I think it's a really interesting space, and we're certainly keen. If you know more, we're always open to learn more. But yeah, we love hemp. It's the one, I will say, it's the only one of our fabrics currently that is not knitted in Australia. It comes from China because that is where all the hemp is grown commercially at scale in the world. So yeah, it'd be wonderful if we could onshore that. That'd be great.
Awesome. We are over time, but we still have a few questions. Are you happy to continue this going?
Absolutely.
So I asked a few investors if they already bought from you or not, and we got actually a lot of feedback. So Gabrielle said she bought 3 items. She's very happy.
Thank you.
We got Megan saying, I'm a customer, husband and I buy all the time. We're so impressed. We're very happy. We placed an order with Eric. Great sales techniques. Candice said, I have bought several items, including sweatpants. She loved the boat neck 3/4 sleeve. It's her favorite.
As our best-selling style.
Yeah. Pepita saying bought a number of pieces, probably 8 or more pieces, including 2 sweatshirts. Love the products, and I'll keep recommending to others. You already have a brand ambassador right here.
Thank you.
Brandon said, I'm an early investor and I have several t-shirts and absolutely love them. They make all the other t-shirts feel weird and uncomfortable.
That's the best.
He said, I don't know how your algorithm works, but they work. If it's
Yeah.
and Susan as well, I leave in my t-shirts, always reach for them. So great feedback. Sean as well, I'm interested in investing as I'm a customer and wear them every day. Tick all the boxes: sustainability, magic fit, less waste, good sustainable fabrics, open and transparent. Cool. Next question. That's enough praise.
Keep it coming.
When licensing the magic fit, does that adjust the patterns of their style they ordered, as well as providing the customers likely measurements?
So there's several layers to this technology. So without going too deeply into the weeds, Magic Fit is the algorithm that predicts your body shape. Creates a 3D model of your body, which we base everything off. Garment OS, the second piece, the middle layer, actually takes those measurements either from Magic Fit or any other system, depending on what we want to do. And it applies all the transformations around what sort of garment are we making? What sort of adjustments do we need to do for fabric? What sort of adjustments do we need to add because a customer might prefer their t-shirts a bit looser or a bit longer or a bit shorter or a bit tighter? Right? What sort of adjustments would we apply? Because we look at it and go, that looks great, but we think you got broad shoulders. Let's bring that out, a bit more. So it applies a whole bunch of different transformations to end up with a final pattern, which is what is stored. And each one of those is individually tagged, so it can always refer back to something as people's body shape or style preferences change over time.
Awesome, thank you. The last question that we have for now is if you're currently or potentially open to collaborate with other designs for their own creations, as she mentions that she is one of these designers that would like to work with. Is that a possibility?
It is, because we do actually get this all the time. And as Zoltan mentioned, KidX has been the first pilot of that, so we know it's possible. A lot of it's going to come down to the specific requirements in terms of the style. So that's something which is get in touch with us and let's chat.
That's what I was going to say.
Louisa, I'm going to send the guys your email that you probably sign up to come to this webinar, so you can keep in touch from there. Cool. That brings us to the end of the webinar. Again, Thank you so much for your time and thanks for all the potential investors. If you haven't expressed interest, please go ahead and do it now so you can invest before anybody else. Before we go, are you offering rewards to investors?
Yes, we will. So last time, 2 years ago, we gave gift cards, like a sort of, I think it was if you invested $1,000, you got a $100 gift card. We're going to do basically the same thing again. We haven't exactly decided. That's coming in the document on Tuesday, but there'll be gift cards for sure. And more importantly, what we're going to do is we're going to incentivize people to invest early by actually increasing the value of those gift cards. So if you're part of the EOI and you invest within the first, I think it's 48 hours, is that the threshold, Leila? Yeah. So if you invest within the first 48 hours, then we'll actually increase the value of that gift card for you by way of saying thanks.
That's awesome. So just sending over here their link to express interest in the chat, but we're gonna also send an email with this recording and with all the links there. Thank you so much, everyone, again, and thank you so much, you guys, for joining and giving us so much knowledge about the business.
No, thank you for
Thanks a
everyone
lot.
who's taken the time to spend with us today. And just because it's the end of the session doesn't mean it's the end of questions. We are always happy to answer anything that you may have. So feel free to get in touch with us and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
So, bye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a lovely day.